In this video, I'm going to share how you can apply simple critical thinking to address interview questions when you're not prepared. Now, here is what typically happens. You often get a scenario question you didn't prepare for. And what really happens is your brain freezes, and instead of thinking clearly, you start rambling towards a solution. According to neuroscience, under stress, the brain switches from deliberate to intuitive processing. Now, add time pressure, and your decision quality drops significantly from 83% to 57%. Now, this leads to interview anxiety that leads to lower competency perception, which then cascades into lower performance rating of an interview candidate. This is the main reason why 80% of candidates fail in a case study interview at a top tech company. They fail to apply one key element to their interview process: critical thinking. Now, there are various mental models to master critical thinking, and most candidates practice them while preparing for interviews. It's given you practice. Now, this day is limited to pre prep and predictable questions. The moment something unexpected lands during the interview, these frameworks disappear. So, in this video, I'm going to show you how to handle exactly this situation when you're faced with an on the spot case study question or a random scenario based question you cannot fully prepare for in advance. But before that, we need to understand why critical thinking matters so much in interview. The reason is because critical thinking has become totally non negotiable across roles. Solutions to workplace problems are rarely straightforward or binary. Candidates constantly encounter incomplete information, which means you need to ask the right questions, gather the context, and the reasons for implications in real time. That is the reason why interviews have become the primary assessment tool for critical thinking in candidate. Now let's look at this example and watch what really happens when a candidate gets a situational question. Our customer acquisition cost is rising. And as a marketing manager, how would you address this? Now, the instinctive approach is to jump straight into solution. And this is exactly what most candidates do. They try to answer the question, handle the problem head on. And that is where it all starts to fall apart. So now the real question is, how do you stop from doing this? You can address this problem with the 4A framework that I'm going to share in this video right now. And at the end, I'm also going to share a bonus step called the Reframe and talk about why it is so critical in certain situations. Now, step one of the 4A framework is assess. Every time you get a scenario based question, before you say anything, do a fast mental scan of the prompt to separate what is clear from what is missing and what is consuming. Take note if you're allowed to. Do the assessment in your mind for 10 to 50 seconds, break down the prompt into all these three elements, then bucket the information that has been shared into these three segments. What information do I have? Key facts, figures, problems, stated goals. Then ask yourself, is this information enough to restate with certainty the question being asked? Check what information you're missing: constraints, data, outcome, timeline, stakeholder, audience metrics, any information that you feel is critical but not in this prompt. Take a mental note of that. And then think about what you are confused with. Words, term, phrase, unclear priorities. This is another bucket of information which is very critical for you to give the right answer. When you assess this information, you have the facts, you also know the gaps, you also know what is it that is confusing you. With all this information, now you're ready to move to step two. Step two is the process of asking the right question. One of the key elements of critical thinking is your ability to ask good question. Because when you ask good question, it does three things simultaneously. First, it helps you achieve the objective of information gathering. We saw this with the SS stage. When you broke down the prompt or the question that was asked, there was information which was missing. There were certain areas where you had some sort of confusion. Your ability to ask the right questions solves this problem. That is the first thing. The second thing asking good question does, it demonstrates quick thinking on your part. You show that you don't jump to conclusion immediately, rather you assess the information, you ask the right questions, and you're thinking. And the third thing it does, it prevents rework. You establish shared understanding before proposing a solution. So how do you know what question to ask? Now from step one, you already have the facts, so your question will come from the remaining two bucket. Information missing and assumptions that you need to validate, or clarification that you require from the interviewer. So your next step should be to do a quick scan of this two bucket and pick 2-3 issues that helps you get deeper understanding of the problem and frame them as your questions to ask. Let's look at some of the examples of questions you can ask. Let's say you're missing some information that is critical to solve this problem. Convert them into a straightforward question and ask. Similarly, for assumption validation, you can ask questions like, what exactly do you mean by this? Let's revisit the question of customer acquisition cost that we talked about earlier. Let's say the interviewer asks you, our customer acquisition cost is rising for our paid channel. What would you do as a marketing manager? Now, here are the facts that you know from this question. CAC is rising. It is a paid channel. Now, what are the missing information? Time frame, which campaign, which segment, what kind of impact are they looking, constraints, what has been tried in the past. All of this information are missing. Now, there could be areas of confusion or clarity required. For example, the interviewer says our customer acquisition cost is rising. So, what does rising mean? Is it means it is rising gradually, or is it means it has been spiking? Now, asking a question does not put you in a spot because the interviewer isn't expecting you to have all the answers. In fact, it validates your questioning logic and reasoning capability. But even after asking a few questions, you still won't have all the information. A project that takes weeks of analysis and planning is now expected to be solved within a time bound interview period is never going to be perfect. But you still have to present your best recommendation. And this is the real test of critical thinking that takes us to step 3. I call step 3 arrange. Now, what do I mean by this? With all the information gathered so far in your previous 2 steps, now you arrange this information. Then re-bucket the information you have using the simple process called the GROW model. First is your goal. What outcome are you trying to achieve? Second is the reality. What is the current state? Third is the obstacle or the objections that are there. What is blocking progress? What could be done to address this? And last is the way forward. Which is the best approach and how would you execute it? Using GROW, you can not only arrange the information but also directly counter the biases of jumping into conclusion. You delay your judgment until you are ready with your recommendation. In other words, you're forcing yourself to structure your thought process before deciding as to what is going to be your recommendation. Let's look at an example of the same CAC question. Here is how you should arrange the information. Goal: bring CAC back within target without hurting conversions. Now, the reality is, customer acquisition cost has gone up in the last couple of weeks, mostly in one paid channel. Now, the obstacle is increase in ad prices, competitors targeting the same audience to the same channel is affecting your CAC. So, the way forward is isolate where CAC has increased and then identify and evaluate the tactics that you're going to apply. Now, with this GROW framework, you are totally structured. You have the building block to frame your answers. Now, step 4, I like to call it apply. Let me explain what do I mean by this. It means how do you apply the arranged information to form a structured recommendation? Here is how you can do it. With the information arranged with the GROW framework, identify the best 2 tactics that you can apply to this problem. Thumb rule I like to follow is stick to 1 or 2 tactics and deliberate on it, because if you have more options available, you need to deliberate more and it will create only more confusion. For example, your 2 tactics could be option A: improve landing page conversion through better messaging and targeting aimed at specific challenge where CAC is the main issue. Your second option could be you tighten your targeting plus refresh creative and invest in alternative marketing channel and readjust the spend. Now, for each of these tactics, evaluate the trade off. For example, for your first tactic, improve landing page conversion through better messaging and targeting, the trade off could be complex coordination and time investment. And for your second option, the trade off could be it may reduce the volume of audience or customers that you can target in the short term. Now, with the constraints and trade off defined for both your options, your next job is to identify which one of these tactics is the most defensible given the constraints and why. Let's say you go with option B. Now, finally, this is how you can reframe your answer. Now, I have evaluated 2 options and I would like to go with my option B. I would tighten targeting, refresh creative, and invest in an alternative marketing campaign with spend adjustment because it is the fastest to deploy and with available resources despite short term volume trade off that we might face. I believe this is the best strategy to address the main issue of rising customer acquisition costs. Now, observe and understand what you did here. You deconstructed a situational question in 4 steps and then framed the defensible recommendation with clarity, structure, and logic. You identified the root cause, you decided on 2 tactics, you mapped those tactics with the trade offs, and finally arrived at your defensible recommendation. This is your final goal. Your aim should be to achieve one recommendation you can defend with reasons. Now, this is a practical learnable process, and I train a lot of people in my coaching programs. So, if this framework is helpful, hit the like and share button and subscribe to the channel so that you can watch more videos like this. All right, now this brings us to the fifth step or the bonus step that I mentioned earlier that I'm going to share at the end of this video. This is what I call the reframe. Use it as a trump card. Now, let me explain what do I mean by this. Sometimes the situational questions are unusually open ended. Even after applying the 4A critical thinking framework, your recommendation can miss the mark dramatically. And it happens quite often. Now, if you sense this is happening, try this tactic. Close your recommendation with a meta question. Does this align or did I miss a key constraint? Now, this is a metacognitive layer. You are making the room think about your thinking. It shows adaptability, it invites feedback, it helps you end in a very strong way. Let's understand this with an example. Let's say you deliver your recommendation, which is your option B, that requires shifting the marketing budget to a new channel, and then you end with the reframe. Does this align or did I miss a key constraint? Now, let's say the interviewer's response is actually, we can't shift the budget. Leadership wants CAC down without changing channels or spends. Now, this puts you in a tight spot. Most candidates would retrace their steps and try to figure out an alternative answer, which is where things started to fall apart. Instead of doing that, look at this as an opening for you to reframe your recommendation. Now, here's what you should do. Simply state this new understanding first so that you don't mess it up again. State it as this. Got it. So the test here is to improve efficiency without channel or spend changes. Then reframe your recommendation in this way. In that case, I'm going to keep the same strategy but focus on removing waste inside the current spends, tighten targeting, cut low intent audiences without shifting channel. Then I would measure the customer acquisition cost change by segments within 2 weeks to isolate what's driving this increase. Now, this is the final show of adaptability that this critical thinking process allows you to demonstrate in an interview scenario when faced with a situational or a case study question that you have not been able to prepare in advance. Now, I've shared the 4A framework and also shared the reframe bonus point, but the question remains, how do you master this? You see, this critical thinking strategy is great only if you can apply it live. And you can do that with deliberate practice with situations in your day to day life. You see, repeated daily exposure to unknown scenarios creates variations you can't predict in advance. Here is a daily simple practice system you can follow and build the skills in your day to day routine. Step one is build a scenario. You start by drafting a random scenario from your everyday life situation. Focus on two key elements. First is your constraint, your role, responsibility, what you can influence, what you can own, what you can do. The second element is the unknown, which is the most critical one, the business environment or the situational scenario or the critical pain you need to address. You can use AI tools like ChatGPT, Perplexity to generate one random scenarios you haven't seen before. And maintain this guardrail. Keep the scenarios grounded in real situation with real constraints, real stakeholders, and real metrics, even if numbers are missing. Next step, practice this routine one scenario at a time using the 4A framework that I just walked you through. Start with the assess, 10-15 seconds, rephrase and bucket all the facts, missing information, and what you're confused with or what clarity that you require. Next, move to the ask stage. Identify the 2 4 high leverage questions that you need to ask in order to deepen your understanding about the situation. And then move to step 3, which is arrange. Say it out loud. Let me organize what I understand using the GROW framework. And once you've arranged the information, move to the apply stage. Identify the root cause, 2 tactics which are the most relevant one, the trade-offs, and then narrow down your final recommendation. This is where you show decision quality, not more ideas. Post your recommendation. If required, practice reframe. Does this align or did I miss any constraint? Then force yourself to reframe once if a new constraint applies. Do this repeatedly and you will get better with time. Now, one element I want you to add to this practice is progressive difficulty. What do I mean by this? When you start building the skills, start with simple scenarios and then gradually move to complex scenarios by adding chaos elements. Like, for example, time pressure, cut yourself off, incomplete information, no numbers. conflicting priorities, stakeholder objections, you name it. All of this keeps adding difficulty. Now, this is what I call progressive difficulty. Adapting yourself and addressing more and more difficult, complex problem with complex constraint. Now, once you've done your practice over and over again, you can then transfer this framework to an interview scenario. Run mock interviews to test your ability. Work with somebody who can help you with this practice. Remember to always keep strict time frame for the exercise and you will see improvement with every practice. Alright, this is all in this video. If you like it, please like and share this video. And if you want to learn more about interview system, please subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.